Welcome to 5 Minutes with Errol Musk. Errol, I would like you to share your views on wokeness. People argue about that. There's riots. There's a lot of different viewpoints on that. It's not really in the history. It's not really new. It's what happened in the history. What's the history about homosexuality, or is there incidences of things that you can share with us?
Yes. Well, wokeness is the definition is being aware of inequality, and so I would say that I think all people are equal, but only in one thing: everybody is equally unequal. So I know that sounds funny, but everybody is equally unequal. So you might find that that man's very rich, but he's got poor health. You're very healthy, but you've got no money. So everybody has something. Nobody's got what they want. There's always gaps. So as I say, everybody is equally unequal. And so awareness of inequality is a sort of, it depends on your perception, of course, whether you feel you are being treated unequally. So I have had that in my life. I mean, I've found, for example, that I wasn't able to go into certain clubs and things because I was not a member, or I wasn't able to even become a member. And, and I'm a white guy, let's say, talking about race. I can't get into a white club because, so I mean, there's always something. And it's like you try and get your kids into a good private school, you also have to sort of, you get treated unfairly, unequally. So, I mean, being treated unfairly or inequality is completely the norm. So to try and complain about it is absolutely ridiculous. And it's always going to be with us. And as I say, all people are equal, but equal in only one thing. All people are equally unequal.
Okay, Errol, thank you. So we have the definition of wokeness from you, and can you share your views on homosexuality? Or
well, look, homosexuality is one of the areas in which people are, I suppose you could say today, fighting for what they call equality. But homosexuality has been with humanity for thousands of years. I mean, it's not a brand new thing. There have been times when it's completely acceptable, and other times when the authorities of the day think it's not acceptable, and so it goes up and down, up and down. We just happen to live in the period, perhaps from the Victorian era onwards, where it's frowned upon. And in fact, in some countries, still frowned upon, and actually carries very severe penalties and imprisonment and so on today. Not in this country or in most Western countries, but in other countries. So homosexuality, look, everybody's born with sexual desire. So it's like hunger. I mean, everybody, in fact, they call it sexual hunger. So everybody has sexual hunger, and they have ordinary hunger, and other things, and you have to satisfy these things. You have to find a way to satisfy them, and if you don't, then you start to get ill, you might say. So in the past, in history, if you go back very far, let's say you go back, say, 3,500 years to the Akkadian Empire, period of Sargon and so on. I mean, it was completely normal, and in many places since then, to have houses of pleasure, where people of any persuasion could go in and, choose whatever they want. A man, a woman, and a young woman or a young man, So it was not frowned upon. It was, it was a profession. It was, people paid for it. And I mean, from my notes here that I made quickly, the marriage age, even today in many countries, is for a woman is 12, And I mean, in previous times, it was probably, I've read that it's been less, so like 10. So in fact, it's puberty. Whenever the child, the girl reaches puberty, which is nature's plan, that's when you are ready to be married according to nature. So you might say, well, that's not right. But you have to remember that in many ages, people didn't live long lives. Their lives, the lifespan is 30 at times. So you had to squeeze everything into 30, having a child, raising a child, and everything, and then you did. So we now have a society in which people who are 80, are planning their 90th birthday sort of thing. So that's quite nice. But in reality, so we sort of try to match that, our life cycle to that, a thing. And, so by and large, I would say there's less suffering and misery and pain in the world today than there has been in history. We have less suffering and misery today in the world than in all of history. So, so we do live in a sort of different time, and I would say that today, if someone is discovered to be homosexual or declares themselves to be homosexual, and if it's a child, let's say a young person says they are, to their parents, I don't know what they'd call it, I'm gay or whatever. My experience is that for the family involved, it's a terrible shock. For other people, they've all known about it anyway because they've seen it. So the people that their friends know already. So it's not like the big news. But for the parents, the parents, let's say, of such a girl or boy, it's a big shock. You see, because they like close their eyes to it. They cry and say, oh, this is so terrible. And then when they do call you and say, oh, I don't know what to do, and depending on their, their level where they are in society, I mean, if they're up at the upper class, well, they won't care so much. Or if they're at the very lower class, they won't care. If they're in the sort of middle of the middle class, then they're very concerned that they're going to be looked on very badly, So, but nevertheless, my answer to people like that is always to say to them, there's nothing about it, nothing wrong with it. And what happens is that in about, well, I would say I was going to say 2 years, but often it's less. But let's say at the most 2 years, it's a nothing burger. It's a complete nothing burger. Everybody just accepts it, and it's a nothing burger. So why people should be concerned about equality and being treated unequally and everything just doesn't happen these days. So that's not a reason for rioting and so on, which they seem to want to do with this wokeness crowd seem to want to do.
Or maybe if they don't feel they have place for it. But transgenderism, your views on that?
Well, yeah, transgenderism. Okay, well, let's say, look, in the 1700s, for example, but I mean, of course, there would be other times as well, but in the 1700s, men wore makeup. And they also wore wigs. Now, admittedly, makeup started as a way of putting mercuric oxide, I think it is, on your face. It's a white paste to hide smallpox scars. So, yeah, it started like that. Then, of course, people started to realize, well, this makes me look good, so I'm going to, even if I don't have smallpox, I'm going to use it, you see. So men and women use lipstick and makeup and eyebrow liner and all that sort of stuff, and wigs, in the 1700s. And so if you look at many portraits, if you see a portrait, for example, of Charles II, I mean, he was late 1600s, but he's all made up. If you look at people in the 1700s, they're all made up. And so it's not something that that it's major. And the other thing is, that I've written here is that women today are allowed to dress in beautiful colors. We live in a time when, well, I won't say only this time, but we live in a time where there are still wonderful fabrics and colors and such like available. Women are allowed to wear them and looks dashing, and they have high collars and all sorts of things, But unless you're Dracula or somebody, you have to dress like a penguin. But at least Dracula can have he can have red liner to his coat, to his black coat, So yeah, no, I think that's unfair. I think why should men look like a bunch of penguins? Why can't they also look nice? And if it means that they want to dress in such a way that they could look female, or or for that matter, or want to look female, well, who cares? It's nice. Why not? I mean, back in the 50s, 40s and things, 40s, I think 40s, 30s and 40s. Well, I think they're called turnabout parties, where people would go to a party. The men goes women and the women goes men, and so that that was fun. So I don't see any problem like that with that type of thing. I saw a portrait of Isaac Newton. I mean, he's all made up. Portrait is full of makeup.
Oh.
So, okay. And then I made a note here, Florence. I was in Florence in the mid-'80s, and I was with a CID officer friend of mine, and he said to me, would you like to see the woman of Florence, of the night, So I said, yeah, I'd like to. So we got in the car and we drove. Florence, beautiful place. We drove around and we saw about 7 women. And I mean, they were so beautiful. I've never seen such beautiful women in my life. And he said to me afterwards, we went for a coffee, and he said, so what do you think? So I said, whoa, Carlo, they are, I mean, I can't believe it. I mean, they're such beautiful women. He said to me, Errol, they are all men. So, what? What do you mean? So, anyway, so of course I insist, no, we've got to go back. I want to go and see, I want another look here, you see. So we go back to the first one that I saw, which was the most beautiful one. Her name was Veronica. So we get back there, and, Veronica's still there, and wearing a sort of burgundy dress, beautiful. I mean, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And I tried as hard as I could. I'm trying everything while Carl is talking to. Of course, they don't speak English, but so I'm able to, sort of like trying to figure out, where does this, I can't work this out. Hang on, no, man, this Connor's telling me lies. But anyway, so then Connor says to me, do you want to see the real, see the woman of the night, the woman of Florence that you can, sort of houses of pleasure type of thing. So I said, well, all right. So he took me to this place, and out came a sort of round-shouldered, looked like a teardrop woman, fat, jersey, straggly hair, moustache. And he said, that's a woman of the night. That you can So, okay. So then Colin said to me, listen, Errol, if you are I'm trying to put on my Italian accent. If you're a woman in Italy, you don't have to you marry a millionaire if you're a beautiful woman. Too many millionaires here, And so then, just the other day I saw a cartoon or meme, and it showed this very beautiful woman in a blue bikini, you see, at a swimming pool. I mean, really, really eye-catching. Wow, I want that. Look at that picture. And it said underneath, Thai men, Thailand men. And then in the sort of picture next to it was a very, very fat woman, eating popcorn from a big bucket, lying on a bed, and underneath it said, American woman. So I mean, it sort of gives you an idea. And then coming back to that Carla thing is something that happened when I was very young. I was about 18, And I was 18, 19, and May and I, she would be about 17. They never wore makeup, and we never had hardtack or anything like that, hard drink or anything. But anyway, I worked for this nightclub, this steakhouse. It was the best steakhouse, and the owner was very nice to me. And after work one night, he said he's taking me and May and his girlfriend to the Diamond Horseshoe nightclub, you see, in Johannesburg, which was a great place in those days, better than New York, better than London. And so we went there, and I was immediately, in those days people danced, holding each other, properly, and and a band and everything. So it was really quite a classy place. And Rob was obviously, connected. We got a nice seat, sort of round seat, cushion seat, and everything. And then I was looking at all these women on the dance floor. I mean, it was like, wow, geez, I've never seen. And of course, you know where I'm going with this, and I couldn't. There was one in a red dress, blonde in a red dress. I looked at her. Wow. I'm amazed that May didn't clout me. But at any rate, I'm like, woo, geez. So anyway, Rob turns to me just like Carlo did, and he says, and I forgot about that actually, when the Carlo thing happened. He says, Rob says to me, what do you think? And I said, wow, these women are beautiful. Rob turns to me and says, they're all men, Errol. Now, that was 55 years ago. So what's new?
Yeah.
What's new? Nothing. So,
what people might not know is that you have an extreme visual artistic ability, but we can do that in another session.
Yeah.
Something else on the list is racism, or maybe people with different cultures, different cultural beliefs.
Inequality, yeah. Yeah, obviously, racism has been a subject of, inequality. But, it's a strange thing. I mean, the Japanese, for example, I don't know if they still do it, but for example, if a Japanese person got onto Japan Airlines and they had a seat allocated to them that was going to have a so-called white person next to them, what we would call like a European, but a white person, they would actually say to the Japanese person, are you prepared to sit next to, a so-called white person? I don't know what they would call us. I think they have a sort of name for it. But would you be prepared to sit next to one of them? And the Japanese person could say, no, I'm not prepared to sit next to it. So they're dirty. You see, the white people are dirty, so they don't want to. So you get, you think, well, wow, gee, I didn't think it was like that. And then, of course, you go to deep Africa, where I've been, and you meet African tribes. They don't think that they are inferior to you. In fact, not at all. They're very proud, and don't even think about it like that. So when you get areas that get mixed together and so on, I mean, so people have talked about racism as being, I mean, let's face it, I mean, up to about 1965, white people across history in the last, say, century, last few centuries, I can't go too far back, did come to the conclusion that they were superior to the black and yellow and red nations that they met, and they subjugated those nations. And I think, for example, black women were only allowed the vote, the permission to vote in 1965 in America, in the United States. So until 1965, the black women couldn't vote in the United States, and until 1936, black men couldn't vote in the United States, and until about 1919, blacks could not be citizens of the United States. And the party, in fact, that voted against them being allowed to be any of those things from the beginning, including emancipation, was the Democrat Party. They voted against that blacks should have any of these rights. So, in this country, South Africa, we've been accused of apartheid and all that sort of stuff. But all we did, we were just on the tail end of what everybody else had been doing, So I'm very pleased and proud to say that today in South Africa, I haven't seen racism in action. I've said for years. I mean, there's no racism here at all. Nothing whatsoever. You know, I was at a casino last night, and I enjoy that. I enjoy a bit of roulette, and I'm surrounded by some of the nicest guys I've ever met. Been with. I mean, you know, they're so polite to me and so decent to me. And they,
Women? Or...
No, all men. And you know, there's all kinds. They're yellow, brown, black. You know, I don't know. And you know, there's just no racism. So it's you know, it's just a non-event here in South Africa now. I'm very proud to say. And I think a lot of it, racism is spurred by fear of something different. You know, so if something's different, you think, well, you know, I'm very scared of that. But I would say that in many ways racism has peaked. In other words, people are aware of across the world now that you should not be racist, you know, and people or sort of pretend, you know. But culturalism, that's something else. So you can't expect one particular culture to just simply accept another culture. They don't. Culture is a kind of, you know, what is your culture? What is your race? I mean, it's culture that makes people really say no to each other.
Well, people have different belief systems.
Yes,
like
culture and I suppose religion, not so much these days, but religion. And culture has been mistaken for racism. So it's not that I don't like you as a person, but I don't like the fact that I don't like your culture. I don't like
my habits.
How your people live or what your rules are. I don't, you know, so you have different cultures. And that's why we have different countries, because they're different cultures. And they can't be put together because they just can't live together. There have to be borders. Yes.
One of the other different set of rules is
polygamy.
Polygamy. Yeah.
I see your note here. Polygamy. Well, you know, polygamy was normal throughout history. So let's go back. Let's be conservative. For about 8,000 years, I don't know, polygamy was normal. So it was quite normal for a man to have many wives. And it still is in this country. So I can have as many wives as I like in South Africa. And on the other hand, of course, as a, you know, sort of a white middle class, I suppose, South African, I mean, one wife, wow, that's stuff. 2 wives, ooh. 3 wives, gee. You know, I mean, you know, we're going shopping. Oh, you know, I won't be here when you come back. You know, but all the great figures of history that we look back on in the, you know, for over the thousands of years, they all had many, many wives. So I mean, all the great leaders of the old empires, you know, Darius and you know, I think that the Greeks may have changed. I'm not sure, but certainly the countries that had harems and things like that, it was quite normal to have a lot of wives if you were wealthy. And I wouldn't care less if some guy came in and he said he's got 3 wives. I'd say, well, you know, gee, you must be rich. I mean, you know, so what do you do? I mean, what do you do for a living, you know? So yeah, so I mean, in that respect, I mean, okay, so let's say I've got lots of money, you know, like hundreds of millions. Oh, I'd have 10 wives. Why not? Be nice. I mean, why not? Well, I stop at 10, 100 wives, great. Then I won't even remember their names. So it'll be kind of like, you know, difficult to mix them up, you know. I mix my children up, so I'd be mixing them up a lot. But, yeah, so, you know, polygamy is laughable. I mean, if you want to, I don't see any problem with it. I mean, if you can get rich enough women to have a number of husbands, why not? Who cares? Great, why not?
No, I see it difficult.
I mean, why should we go around having secret affairs and being punished because we've had an affair with somebody while we're married, because we are essentially polygamous. Men, I suppose, are they're sort of considered to be polygamous, but my experience is that women are pretty polygamous too. So, married women. I mean, so
as long
it's
as
possible.
they all get along.
Yeah, but we have rules so that make it, you're, it's the end of my marriage, I have to get divorced now. So when you don't have those rules, going back to houses of pleasure, where you can work off your sexual appetite, you don't have to go and, abduct somebody to work off your sexual appetite. For a little bit of money, you can satisfy your sexual appetite, which is growing. You satisfy it, and a few days later it goes back again. So I don't see any, I think that those ideas of the past were better, much better, because now you're forced into a situation that makes you very unhappy, and you are punished if you break those rules, which is kind of silly. So wrong. I mean, the Roman people are well known for the fact that they had a very much looser marriage arrangements. Marriage was a business contract, but who they, sort of mingled with and stuff, well, that was a bit looser. They didn't break up some great patriarchy, or, in those days it was a patriarchy. Maybe one day it'll be matriarchies, just because, this and that happened. And of course that makes much more sense. Whereas here, today, you'll have a very, let's say, successful little family. Something like that happens, boom, it's a financial catastrophe. They split up. The kids get split up. It's a complete financial catastrophe. It's an emotional catastrophe. It's ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. So,
Something else on the periphery, or that is controversial, wife lending.
Oh, wife lending. Yes. Well, I mean, there were societies, and I think there still are probably, where you were offered, if you were an honoured guest, you offered the man's wife for the night, or one of his wives. You were offered one of his wives or his wife for the night, if you were an honoured guest. And so, just normal. And it was difficult for Europeans when they first came in contact with different races, over the, let's say, the periods starting from Columbus onwards and stuff, and came across these different cultures and would be invited to, lend the guy's wife, for the night. And I mean, obviously, I wouldn't actually like that myself, but again, cultures differ. I wouldn't say yes to. I wouldn't, unless his wife was like so super amazing, maybe then I'd say yes. But even so, I'd feel embarrassed the next day, personally, right now, as I am now. But I would say that it's not. Well, I can't see that ever happening in our societies, but it happened. It did happen in the past, and it happens perhaps even today in places. And so I don't think that anyone should, lose any sleep over it. In fact, what we do in our societies, we do all these things, but we do it surreptitiously. So the husband doesn't know, and the wife doesn't know, and so it's happening. And that's not so good. And on the other hand, it's a touchy subject, so...
Always better if you can discuss it, I would say.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
And then just discrimination is not always a bad thing. Psychologists would encourage people to follow their own preferences for things. So
yes. Well, I mean, if I discriminate by coming to this particular venue, this hotel, this beautiful hotel, I would. I discriminate. I don't want to go to that one. My friends say they want to go to that one, so no, I want to go to this one, so they can go there. Yeah. I'm discriminating. If I want to see a certain film or go to a certain restaurant, and my friends don't want to go to somewhere else, well, that's discrimination. I'm discriminating. That's what I want. And Men, people, especially men, they discriminate over cars terribly. You know, I mean, they'll have a fight over it. You know, if you give them half a chance. So people discriminate, and it's not always hurtful. And so I don't see that you can actually put a bad thing to discrimination. Say discrimination is bad. It's not bad. You must discriminate.
Yeah, so it's
You must.
almost discerned.
Yes, you discern what is best for you, and you go for that. And people, you'll find people want to live in a certain area, and that's discrimination. And they're told by their company, no, we put you in such and such an area, and then they're very unhappy, and they might leave the company and say, we don't, sorry, we don't want to work for you anymore. We want to live in that area. So that's discrimination.
Thank you, Errol. Errol Musk on Wokeness. Thank you.